My name is Nathan Hayes, and for 10 years the world knew me as a dangerous man. The guard's voice echoed down the sterile corridor of Portland State Psychiatric Hospital. "Hayes, you got a visitor." I looked up from my push-up position, number 417 of the morning, and felt that old familiar tightness in my chest. Visitors were rare. Visitors meant something had happened. I knew it was bad the moment I saw him. Thomas stood in the visitation room doorway, and for a second, I was looking into a mirror that showed me what I might have become if I'd never ended up here. Same face, same build, same cowlick that our mother used to try to tame with spit in her fingers. But where 10 years of forced discipline had carved me into something harder, sharper, life had beaten my twin brother down into something fragile. His left eye was swollen completely shut, purple and black like a rotten plum. Fresh cuts lined his knuckles, defensive wounds. The way he favored his right side told me broken ribs before he even sat down. "Jesus, Thomas!" I kept my voice level, though that old fire started burning in my chest. "What happened?" He tried to smile. God, he tried. "You should see the other guy." But his voice cracked and I knew. I'd spent 10 years learning to read people, to control the impulses that landed me here when I was 17. 3 guys had cornered Thomas after school. I'd put all 3 in the hospital. The judge called me a danger to society and sentenced me to treatment until the doctors deemed me safe. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was dangerous. But looking at my brother now, I wondered if the world outside these walls wasn't more dangerous than anything locked up inside. "It's Derek," Thomas said, slumping into the plastic chair across from me. "Charlotte's husband. Sarah's husband." He caught himself. We'd changed her name years ago after she'd begged us to let her use Mom's middle name instead. "Derek Stone. He's been hitting her for 2 years, Nathan, every single day, and now he started on Emma." My hands, resting flat on the metal table, began to shake. Emma. 3 years old. The granddaughter I'd only seen in photographs that Thomas smuggled in during visits. A little girl with Sarah's dark hair and eyes that should have been full of mischief, not fear. "She's only 3, Thomas continued, his voice breaking. "I tried to stop him yesterday when he went after her with his belt. He and his family, his mother Patricia, his sister Jessica, they all jumped me, held me down while Derek used his belt, then his fists, then his boots." The chair creaked under my grip. I forced myself to breathe, to think, to not let that 10-year-old rage consume me. Dr. Rodriguez had spent a decade teaching me that rage wasn't wrong. It was energy. The question was what I chose to do with it. I stood and walked to the barred window, looking out at the Portland skyline in the distance. 10 years of push-ups on these bars, 10 years reading every psychology book, every legal text I could get my hands on. 10 years learning to harness the storm inside me. The doctors thought they were rehabilitating me. They were forging me into something far more dangerous than the impulsive 17-year-old who'd fought to protect his brother. "Thomas," I said, still looking out the window. "Look at me. Really look." He raised his head, his one good eye meeting mine. It was like looking in a mirror, except one of us was broken and the other was just waiting. "We're identical," I continued. "Nobody could tell us apart when we were kids. Nobody could tell us apart now." Understanding dawned in his eye, followed immediately by fear. "Nathan, no. You can't. Those people are animals." I smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. "Brother, I've been living with animals for 10 years. The difference is, these ones are locked up and those ones are running free." I grabbed his shoulders, careful of his injuries. "You'll stay here where it's safe. I'm going out there to handle Derek Stone. I'm going to protect Sarah and Emma the way I should have been doing all along." For the first time since he'd walked through that door, hope flickered across Thomas's battered face. Within the hour, we were in the hospital bathroom, trading lives. "This isn't just about switching clothes," I told Thomas as he pulled on my gray institutional shirt. "You have to sell this. Can you do that?" "I've been pretending to be weak for 2 years, Thomas said quietly. "Pretending to be strong should be easier." But I saw the doubt in his eyes. 10 years of being beaten down, first by Derek, then by his family, had carved deep grooves of fear into my brother. That's when Dr. Helen Rodriguez knocked on the bathroom door. "Mr. Hayes, both of you?" Dr. Rodriguez had been my therapist for the entire decade, a small woman with steel gray hair and eyes that saw through every defense mechanism I'd ever tried to build. She was the only staff member I'd trusted with our plan. "Thomas," she said gently, "you'll be staying here as Nathan. I'll personally oversee your care. The trauma you've experienced, what we call complex PTSD, needs treatment. You'll be safe here." She turned to me. "And Nathan, what you're planning, it's risky. But I've watched you for 10 years. You've learned control. Just remember, the goal is justice, not revenge." From his jacket pocket, Thomas pulled out everything I'd need. Keys to the house at 1247 Foster Avenue in East Portland, his ID. His phone, password protected, filled with photos of Sarah and Emma that made my chest tighten, and something else, a small USB drive. "I've been recording things," Thomas said quietly. "Videos, photos, 2 years' worth. Every time Derek hit Sarah, every time he threatened Emma, every time Patricia or Jessica joined in." I hid a phone in the bedroom closet. "I know it's not much, but it's everything," I interrupted. "This changed things. Evidence, legal evidence. Thomas, this is exactly what we need." He also gave me a piece of paper with a name and address, Mrs. Dorothy Miller, 1245. Foster Avenue, neighbor. She's seen everything. "She's tried to call the police 3 times, Thomas explained. "But Derek's friend, there's a cop, Detective Ray Cooper. He makes the reports disappear. I think Cooper's dirty, Nathan. Derek pays him or something. That's why I couldn't get help." My jaw tightened. A corrupt cop protecting an abuser. That complicated things, but it also made sense. It explained why Thomas had felt so trapped. Dr. Rodriguez handed me a business card. "FBI Field Office Portland, Agent James Patterson. If things go wrong, if you need help that won't be compromised by local police, call him directly. I've already contacted their domestic violence unit. They're aware of the situation with Detective Cooper." 20 minutes later, I walked through the hospital doors as Thomas Miller, wearing his threadbare clothes that smelled of defeat and fear. The security guard barely glanced at my discharge papers, forged by Dr. Rodriguez from hospital letterhead, stating that Nathan Hayes needed another week of intensive observation. The bus ride to East Portland took 45 minutes, carrying me through neighborhoods that got progressively worse. Cracked sidewalks, boarded windows, dead grass. This was where my brother had been living, where my niece was trying to survive, where my 3-year-old granddaughter was learning that home meant fear. I was coming to change that. Number 1247. Foster Avenue looked exactly like the kind of place where hope goes to die. The house was a faded blue with paint peeling like dead skin. The yard was mostly dead grass and weeds, with a rusted car up on blocks in the driveway. The mailbox hung at an angle, like even it was trying to escape. From the street, I could smell something rotten, old garbage that hadn't been taken out maybe, or something worse. Next door at 1245, I noticed an elderly woman watching from behind lace curtains. Mrs. Dorothy Miller. Our witness, our hope. I gave her a subtle nod. The curtain twitched and she nodded back. Good. She knew something was happening. The key turned with a grinding sound that set my teeth on edge. The smell hit me first when I opened the door. Unwashed dishes, stale cigarettes, cheap beer, and underneath it all, the sour smell of fear and misery. The living room was chaos. Clothes thrown everywhere, empty beer bottles covering every surface, a television blaring some daytime talk show, scuff marks on the walls. A broken picture frame on the floor, the glass crunched into the dirty carpet, no family photos anywhere, nothing that suggested people actually lived here, rather than just survived. From the kitchen came quiet sounds, someone trying very hard not to make noise, not to draw attention. Then I saw her, Emma sat in the corner behind a laundry basket, trying to make herself invisible. She wore a stained pink dress that was at least 2 sizes too big, probably a hand-me-down from some cousin. Her dark hair hung in tangles around a face that should have been bright with the mischief of a 3-year-old. Instead, her eyes held the wariness of someone who'd learned that being noticed meant being hurt. She looked up as I entered and immediately pressed herself further into the corner, making herself smaller. "Grandpa?" she whispered, and my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. This little girl was afraid of her own grandfather, afraid of Thomas, afraid of the man who should have been her protector but who'd been too broken to help her. "Hey there, sweetheart," I said softly, crouching down to her level but keeping my distance. I didn't want to scare her more than she already was. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." "Daddy?" a nervous voice called from the kitchen. "Is that you?" Sarah appeared in the doorway, and I had to work hard to keep my expression neutral. The vibrant young woman I remembered from Thomas's early visits, before Derek, before all of this, was gone. In her place was a ghost, painfully thin with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and constant fear. She wore long sleeves despite the summer heat, and I knew why. Bruises, always bruises to hide. "Oh," she said, and relief flooded her voice. "It's just you, Dad. Just you." As if Thomas was the safe option, as if anyone in this house was truly safe. But even that relief was colored by fear. She moved like someone who expected to be hit at any moment, shoulders hunched, steps careful, always positioned near an exit. When she bent to pick up a toy from the floor, she winced and favored her left side. Broken rib, I thought. Maybe 2. "How was your appointment?" she asked, not meeting my eyes. The question was automatic, the kind of thing you ask because not asking would be worse. I was still processing this nightmare when I noticed them. Small cameras, poorly hidden, mounted in 3 corners of the room. I recognized the model. Cheap home security cameras that streamed to a smartphone. Derek was watching. Even when he wasn't here, he was watching. "Fine," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "The doctor says I'm making progress." Sarah nodded, already retreating back to the kitchen, back to trying to be invisible. Emma remained in her corner with her headless doll, both of them just existing, just surviving, waiting for the next blow to fall. I stood in the center of that broken home, and I made a decision. This wasn't going to be about revenge. This wasn't going to be about satisfying 10 years of controlled rage. This was going to be about justice. And I was going to use Derek's own surveillance system against him. I'd been in the house for maybe 20 minutes, quietly observing the camera angles and making mental notes, when I heard heavy footsteps thundering down the hallway from the back bedrooms. Well, 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 look what crawled back home. Patricia Stone filled the hallway like a vulture in a floral housecoat. She was a large woman, probably around 58, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun that seemed to pull her whole face into a permanent expression of disapproval. According to Thomas's briefing, she'd been a nurse before retirement, which meant she knew exactly how to hurt people without leaving obvious evidence. Her small, mean eyes swept over the living room with practiced disgust. "There you are, you worthless piece of garbage," she snarled, her voice dripping with venom. "Where the hell have you been all day? Sitting around some doctor's office while my son works his ass off to keep a roof over your pathetic head?" In the corner, Emma curled up smaller, making herself tiny. In the kitchen doorway, Sarah froze mid-step. They'd both heard this before, many times. "Look at this dump," Patricia continued, kicking an empty beer bottle. It skittered across the floor and hit the wall. "No wonder my Derek, comes home stressed every night, having to live with you lazy people." I said nothing, just stood there, letting her words wash over me, watching her. Thomas would have apologized by now, would have started cleaning up, would have made himself small like Emma. But I wasn't Thomas. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Something in my silence was wrong, off script. "What's the matter with you?" she demanded. "Cat got your tongue?" Before I could respond, another voice joined the chorus. "Uncle Thomas is back!" The mockery was thick. "How nice." Jessica Stone emerged from one of the back bedrooms, and she looked like a younger, meaner version of her mother. 32 years old, according to Thomas's notes, working as a grocery store cashier and bitter about it. Bitter about her brother having a wife when she was single. Bitter about Sarah being pretty despite everything. Just bitter. Behind Jessica waddled Tyler, a chubby 5-year-old with chocolate smeared around his mouth and an entitled swagger that made my skin crawl. This was the boy being raised to become the next Derek Stone. Tyler's eyes immediately locked onto Emma in her corner. He marched over with the confidence of a child who'd learned that he could do whatever he wanted without consequences. "Why are you playing with broken toys?" he demanded, snatching Emma's headless doll. "This is stupid. You're stupid too." "Give it back," Emma whispered, her voice so small I almost didn't hear it. "No! Finders keepers!" Tyler threw the doll against the wall, and then, because he could, because he'd learned from the adults around him, he shoved Emma hard enough to knock her over. Emma's small body hit the floor with a sound that ignited something in my chest. Sarah rushed from the kitchen immediately. Tyler, don't!" She dropped beside Emma, pulling her daughter into her arms. "Baby, are you okay?" "Get your hands off him!" Patricia barked, storming toward them. "Don't you dare cuddle that brat when she provoked him." "She's my daughter," Sarah said quietly but firmly, holding Emma protectively. Jessica stepped forward and grabbed Sarah's arm, yanking her away from Emma with enough force to make Sarah cry out. "Your daughter needs to learn to share. Tyler wanted to play with her." "He hurt her," Sarah protested. "Shut up." Jessica shoved Sarah backward. "Don't you dare tell me how to raise my son." Tyler, emboldened by his mother and grandmother's support, drew back his foot to kick the crying Emma. That's when I moved. I was across the room before anyone could blink. My hand closed around Tyler's ankle mid-kick, stopping it cold. The boy's eyes went wide with shock. Nobody had ever stopped him before. "No," I said quietly. Tyler tried to pull away, but my grip was iron. Not enough to hurt him, but enough to send a clear message. "Let go!" he shrieked. "Grandma! Mom!" Patricia charged over, her face red with fury. "Let go of my grandson! How dare you touch him!" I released Tyler and stood to my full height. At 6 feet, I wasn't a giant, but 10 years of discipline had carved my body into something solid, strong, and unmovable. Patricia had to crane her neck up to look at me, and for the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Fear. "Your grandson needs to learn manners," I said, my voice level and cold. "He doesn't touch Emma. He doesn't take her toys. He doesn't push her. Understand?" "Don't tell me how to raise my family," Patricia blustered, but her voice had lost its venom. She took a step back. I took a step forward. "Things are going to change around here," I said quietly. "Starting now." Jessica grabbed Tyler's hand. "Come on, baby. Let's go to Grandma's room." "But I want to play." Tyler started to whine. "Not today," Jessica said quickly, never taking her eyes off me. There was something in my expression that told her the rules had changed, and she didn't want to be there to find out how much. The three of them retreated down the hallway, whispering frantically. A door slammed and locked. Sarah was still on the floor, holding Emma, staring up at me with wide eyes. "Dad, what's gotten into you? You've never stood up to them before." I knelt beside them both, careful to keep my voice gentle. Maybe it's time I started. The house fell into an uneasy silence for the rest of the evening. Patricia and Jessica stayed locked in their room, whispering. I could hear Patricia on her phone, and I knew she was calling Derek, telling him something was wrong, that the old man was acting strange. Good. Let Derek come home angry. Let him come home ready for a confrontation. I'd be ready. While Sarah made dinner in the kitchen, quietly, carefully, trying not to draw attention, I did reconnaissance. The cameras were my first priority, 3 of them, one in the living room corner, one in the kitchen pointing at the table, and one in the hallway, all of them streaming to Derek's phone at the auto shop where he worked. Using Thomas's phone, I accessed the account settings. Derek's password was predictable, Derek1 with a capital D. The stream was recording 24/7 to cloud storage. Perfect. That meant evidence of everything, including Patricia's verbal abuse earlier, including Tyler's attack on Emma, including my intervention. But I needed more. I needed Derek to incriminate himself so thoroughly that no corrupt cop could make it disappear. After dinner, when Sarah took Emma to give her a bath, the little girl's first smile of the day came when Sarah promised to play tea party. I slipped out the back door. Mrs. Dorothy Miller was waiting for me on her back porch. She was maybe 67, with white hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You're not Thomas," she said immediately. It wasn't a question. "I'm his brother," I admitted. "Nathan." She nodded slowly. "Good. Thomas needed help. I've called the police 3 times about what's happening in that house. Each time this Detective Cooper shows up and tells me I'm mistaken, that it's just a family dispute. Last time, he threatened to charge me with filing false reports. Detective Cooper is dirty, I told her. He's protecting Derek, but I have evidence, videos, photos, medical records, and I have a contact at the FBI. Her eyes lit up. FBI, that's smart. Cooper can't touch them. Mrs. Miller, I need your help. When Derek comes home tonight, he's going to be angry. Things might get loud. If you hear anything at all that sounds violent, I need you to call this number. I handed her Agent Patterson's card. Tell them domestic violence in progress, multiple victims, officer corruption suspected. Can you do that? Son, she said firmly, I've been waiting 2 years for someone to give me permission to help. I'll have my phone ready. Back in the house, I made my final preparations. I found an old GoPro camera in a box of Thomas's things, probably from before Derek, from when Thomas still had hobbies and hope. I charged it, set it to record, and hid it on top of a bookshelf with a clear view of the living room. Derek might check his surveillance cameras, but he wouldn't think to look for additional recording devices. I also found Thomas's old phone, the one he'd been using to secretly record Derek. It was fully charged, hidden in the bottom of a cleaning supplies bucket where Derek would never look. I set it to audio record and left it there. Multiple angles, multiple evidence sources. Finally, I sat down with Sarah after Emma was asleep. Dad? She started, then stopped. She was studying my face in the dim light of the kitchen. You're different today. I can't explain how, but you're different. Sometimes we find strength we didn't know we had, I said carefully. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, Derek is going to be very angry when he gets home. Patricia called him. I heard her say you grabbed Tyler, that you threatened them. I didn't threaten anyone. I stopped Tyler from kicking Emma. I know, Sarah said softly. I know you did the right thing. But Derek won't see it that way. Dad, you should... She stopped, swallowed hard. You should go to your room when you hear his motorcycle. Lock the door. He's worse when he's been drinking, and Tuesday nights he always comes home drunk from the bar. Sarah, look at me. She raised her eyes, and I saw 2 years of fear and pain and broken hope in them. I'm not going to hide, I said firmly. Not anymore. And neither are you. But he'll let me handle Derek. She wanted to argue. I could see it in her face, but something in my tone, something in the way I sat there completely calm and ready made her stop. Okay, she whispered. Then, Dad, what happened to you at that appointment today? I smiled slightly. I remembered who I was before I learned to be afraid. At 11:47 p.m., I heard it, the rumble of a motorcycle engine cutting through the night like a chainsaw through glass. Derek Stone was home, and I was ready. The rumble of Derek Stone's motorcycle shattered the midnight silence like breaking glass. I'd been lying awake on the moth-eaten couch in the living room, listening to Sarah and Emma's quiet breathing from the back bedroom. Every muscle in my body was coiled and ready. This was it. The monster who'd been terrorizing my family for 2 years was about to walk through that door, drunk and angry and looking for someone to hurt. The engine sputtered and died with a violent cough, followed by the crash of metal hitting pavement. Derek had dropped the bike. Good. That meant he was very drunk. Heavy, unsteady footsteps stumbled up the front walk, accompanied by a string of slurred curses. Goddamn piece of shit bike. Lost $300. Fucking cards were rigged. The front door exploded inward with a bang that shook the entire house. Derek Stone filled the doorway like a nightmare made flesh. 6'1", probably 220 pounds of muscle gone soft from beer and laziness. He wore a grease-stained work shirt from the auto shop and jeans that reeked of cigarettes, motor oil, and cheap whiskey. His face was flushed red from alcohol, and his small, piggish eyes swept the room with the mean intelligence of a predator looking for prey. "Sarah!" he bellowed, loud enough to wake the dead. "Where the hell are you? Get me some water, now!" From the back bedroom came the sound of frantic whispering and a child's frightened whimper. Emma had woken up, and she was scared. "I said, now!" Derek kicked over a chair, sending it crashing into the wall. Then his bloodshot eyes found me on the couch. "And what's this old bastard doing sleeping on my couch?" He staggered toward me, and I could smell the alcohol radiating off him like toxic fumes. In his drunken state, he probably thought I'd cower like Thomas always had. Scramble up, apologize, make myself scarce. He was about to learn how wrong he was. "Get up, old man," he snarled, weaving slightly on his feet. "You want to live in my house, you follow my rules. First rule, when I come home, you disappear." I stood up slowly, deliberately. At full height, I was only an inch shorter than him, but 10 years of prison conditioning had carved me into something harder than he'd ever be. Muscle built from 400 push-ups every morning, reflexes honed from surviving in a place where violence could erupt at any moment. "Your house?" I said quietly, my voice level and cold. "This is Sarah's house. She pays the rent." Derek's face twisted with rage and confusion. Thomas had never talked back, ever. Did you just talk back to me?" His fists clenched. "I'll teach you some respect, you worthless piece of shit." The slap he threw was wild, telegraphed, the kind of sloppy swing that works on frightened women and children, but nowhere else. I caught his wrist mid-swing, like catching a slow-pitch softball. "What the?" Derek's eyes went wide with shock. He tried to pull his hand back, but it might as well have been caught in a steel trap. I squeezed, not hard enough to break anything yet, just enough to get his attention. "We need to talk about the new rules around here," I said calmly. "Let go of me." Derek tried to throw a punch with his free hand. I caught that wrist too. Now I had him completely helpless, both arms trapped, swaying on his feet like a scarecrow in a windstorm. "Rule number 1, I said, applying steady pressure to his right wrist. "You don't hit Sarah anymore." Crack! The sound of his wrist breaking was sharp and clean, like snapping a dry branch. Derek's scream could have shattered windows. "Rule number 2, I continued, as if nothing had happened. "You don't touch Emma, ever." Before he could scream again, I drove my fist into his solar plexus with surgical precision. All the air left his lungs in a whoosh, and his eyes rolled back in his head. I released his wrists, and he crumpled to the floor like a sack of wet concrete, gasping and clutching his broken wrist. From down the hallway came the sound of doors slamming and frantic whispers, but Patricia and Jessica were too scared to come investigate. They'd heard the scream. They knew something had gone very, very wrong. Sarah appeared in the bedroom doorway, her face pale with shock. "Dad, what did you—" "He tried to hit me," I said calmly. "I defended myself. It's all on camera." I pointed to Derek's surveillance system. Every second. Derek was making wet, gasping sounds on the floor, cradling his shattered wrist. You broke my— I'm calling the cops." "Good idea," I said. "Let's call the police." 20 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up outside, but it wasn't marked. It was Detective Ray Cooper's personal vehicle. Cooper walked in like he owned the place, his badge clipped to his belt, his gut hanging over his pants. 45 years old, with thinning hair and the broken capillaries of a heavy drinker. He took one look at Derek on the floor, then turned to me with practiced disgust. "Thomas Miller," he said, his voice dripping with false authority. "We've been through this before. You can't assault people just because you're having a bad day." I defended myself, I said calmly. "Derek came home drunk and tried to hit me. It's all recorded on those cameras." I pointed. Cooper's eyes flicked to the cameras, then back to Derek. "That true, Derek? You attack him first?" Derek, now sitting up and cradling his wrist, knew exactly what to say. "No, sir. I came home and the old man just went crazy. Started grabbing me, twisting my arm. I think he's having some kind of mental breakdown." "There we go," Cooper said, turning back to me. Sounds like unprovoked assault to me, Mr. Miller. I'm going to have to— Detective Cooper, I interrupted, my voice still calm. Before you finish that sentence, you should know a few things. I pulled out Thomas's phone and held it up. First, I have 2 years of video evidence showing Derek beating his wife and threatening his daughter. Second, I have medical records from 15 hospital visits documenting Sarah's injuries. Third, I have audio recordings of you and Derek discussing how to make domestic violence reports disappear. Cooper's face went pale. You're bluffing. Fourth, I continued, I have a witness next door, Mrs. Dorothy Miller, who has documented every incident of abuse she's witnessed over 2 years. And fifth, I've already sent copies of all this evidence to FBI agent James Patterson at the Portland field office. The room went completely silent, except for Derek's labored breathing. You're lying, Cooper said, but his voice had lost its confidence. I pulled up my email on Thomas's phone and showed him the sent message, time-stamped from earlier that evening. Agent Patterson specializes in domestic violence cases and officer corruption. He's very interested in your relationship with Derek. Cooper's hand moved toward his gun, then stopped. He was calculating odds, and they weren't in his favor. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice still level and controlled. You're going to drive Derek to the hospital to get his wrist treated. You're going to write in your report that he came home drunk, tripped, and fell, injuring himself. And then you're going to stay very, very far away from this family. And if I don't, Cooper blustered, then tomorrow morning, the FBI gets a full report, including evidence of your corruption. You'll lose your badge, your pension, and probably spend 5 to 10 years in prison. Your choice, detective. Cooper stared at me for a long moment. Behind his eyes, I could see the calculation. Was I bluffing? Could he risk it? Come on, Derek, he finally said, helping him to his feet. Let's get you to the ER. Derek looked at me with pure hatred and fear mixed together. This isn't over, old man. Yes, I said quietly. It is. After they left, Sarah was shaking. Dad, how did you— I've been preparing in silence, I told her. Now go back to bed. Keep Emma safe. This is almost over. But I knew Derek and his family wouldn't give up that easily. The next day, Patricia and Jessica were unnaturally cheerful. Derek returned from the hospital around noon with his wrist in a cast, his face pale and sweaty. But instead of rage, the Stone family showed something worse, false kindness. Thomas? Patricia called out in a honey-sweet voice that made my skin crawl. Why don't you join us for dinner tonight? I'm making chicken soup, your favorite. Sarah looked up from where she was feeding Emma, surprise flickering across her face. In all the years she'd lived here, Patricia had never once invited Thomas to eat with the family. That's very kind of you, I replied carefully. That evening, Patricia placed a steaming bowl of soup in front of me with barely contained excitement. Go on, try it, she urged. I put extra seasoning in it, just for you. I lifted the spoon to my lips, pretending to smell it, then noticed my bowl had a slightly darker color than everyone else's. Patricia was biting her lower lip. Anxiety. Jessica wasn't eating, just watching me. Derek was smiling despite his broken wrist. As I raised the spoon higher, I accidentally jerked my elbow, startled by a noise. The bowl went flying, soup splashing across the floor in a steaming puddle. Oh no, I exclaimed. I'm so sorry, Patricia. How clumsy of me. Her face cycled through emotions, disappointment, anger, then forced understanding. It's fine. These things happen. But I caught the look between her and Jessica. They'd been counting on that soup working. I'll just make myself a sandwich, I said, cleaning up the mess. Don't trouble yourself. Around midnight, lying on the couch with my eyes closed but fully awake, I heard it, the soft creak of floorboards. Someone was moving through the house, trying to be quiet. The footsteps paused outside the living room. Through barely opened eyelids, I saw Derek's silhouette against the dim hallway light. Despite his injured wrist, he carried a coil of rope in his good hand. He moved slowly toward the couch, reaching out to grab my shoulder. That's when I struck. My hand shot out and clamped around Derek's throat before he could make a sound. His eyes went wide with shock and terror as I sat up, my grip cutting off his air supply. "Going somewhere?" I whispered. He tried to struggle, but 10 years of prison conditioning had given me strength he couldn't match, especially with one useless arm. Within seconds, he was unconscious. It took me less than 5 minutes to drag him into the main bedroom and secure him to the bed frame with his own rope. I gagged him with a pillowcase to keep him quiet. Then came the tricky part. I slipped out the bedroom's back door, crept around to the side of the house where Patricia and Jessica's room was located, and began pounding on the wall. "Help! Patricia! Jessica!" I shouted at the top of my lungs. "Derek's beating me! Help me, please!" I threw in some convincing groans and the sound of furniture being knocked over, really selling the performance. "He's gone crazy," I yelled. "He's going to kill me. Somebody help." Within seconds, I heard footsteps rushing toward the bedroom. I sprinted back around the house and slipped in through the back door, positioning myself in the corner with my phone camera recording. Patricia burst through the bedroom door first, clutching a wooden rolling pin like a weapon, her face twisted with savage glee. Right behind her came Jessica, wielding a metal mop handle. "Where is he?" Patricia hissed, squinting into the dark room. "Where's that old bastard?" The bedroom was pitch black except for a thin sliver of light from the hallway. On the bed, they could make out the silhouette of a figure tied down and struggling, muffled sounds coming from behind a gag. "There," Jessica pointed with her weapon. "He's trying to get loose." "This is for breaking Derek's wrist." Patricia raised the rolling pin above her head and brought it down hard across the figure's ribs. The muffled scream should have given them pause. It didn't sound like Thomas's voice, but they were too caught up in their bloodlust to notice. "And this is for embarrassing our family." Jessica swung the mop handle like a baseball bat, connecting with what she thought was my shoulder but was actually Derek's already injured arm. More muffled screaming, more desperate struggling against the ropes. "Hit him harder," Patricia panted, bringing the rolling pin down again and again. "Make him pay for thinking he could stand up to us." Jessica was in a frenzy now, raining blows on the helpless figure. "You think you're so tough now, old man? Not so tough when you can't fight back." The beating went on for 3 minutes and 47 seconds. I know because my phone was recording every moment in perfect high-definition clarity. Finally, Patricia stepped back, wiping sweat from her forehead. "I think he's learned his lesson." "Should we untie him?" Jessica asked, still gripping her weapon. "Not yet. Let him think about what happens when he crosses the Stone family." That's when I stood up from the corner and flipped on the light switch. The sudden brightness made both women squint. When their vision cleared, they found themselves staring at a scene that would haunt their nightmares forever. Derek lay tied to the bed, his face a mask of blood and bruises, his broken wrist bent at an impossible angle. His eyes were wide with pain and terror above the gag, and his chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow breaths. Patricia's rolling pin clattered to the floor. Jessica's mouth fell open in a perfect O of horror. "Surprise," I said calmly, holding up my phone with the camera still recording. "Say hello to the evidence." "Oh my God," Patricia whispered, staring at her unconscious son. "Oh my God, what have we done?" "What you've done," I corrected, "is commit aggravated assault with deadly weapons, on camera, with clear audio of you admitting it was revenge." Jessica was shaking so hard she could barely stand. We thought, you said, I said Derek was in the bedroom. I never said I was the one tied up. That assumption just cost you both about 10 to 15 years in prison." Patricia fell to her knees beside the bed, reaching for Derek with trembling hands. "Baby, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." "Don't touch him," I snapped. "You've done enough damage." I held up the phone again, making sure they could see the recording light. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm calling 911. You're both going to jail. And this video is going to make sure you stay there for a very long time." Both women were crying now, the reality of what they'd done finally sinking in. I dialed 911, my voice calm and clear. "I need to report an aggravated assault at 1247 Foster Avenue. Two women just beat a man with weapons while he was tied to a bed. He's unconscious and bleeding badly. Send an ambulance and police immediately. Within minutes, sirens filled the night air, but this time it wasn't Detective Cooper responding. This time, it was Sergeant Maria Santos from Portland PD Internal Affairs and FBI agent James Patterson. This time, justice was actually coming. The wail of sirens cut through the night air like a symphony of justice. Red and blue lights painted the narrow street as two patrol cars, an unmarked sedan, and an ambulance arrived at 1247 Foster Avenue. Mrs. Dorothy Miller stood on her porch with her arms crossed in a grim smile of satisfaction. Sergeant Maria Santos from Portland PD Internal Affairs entered first, a compact woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Right behind her came FBI agent James Patterson, mid-30s, clean-cut, carrying himself with quiet authority. "Mr. Miller?" Sergeant Santos asked. "I'm Nathan Hayes," I said clearly. "I have video evidence of aggravated assault, along with 2 years of documented domestic violence." Agent Patterson stepped forward. "Mr. Hayes, we received Mrs. Dorothy Miller's call. We've been investigating Detective Ray Cooper for 3 months on corruption charges." He looked into the bedroom where Patricia and Jessica stood frozen, then at Derek unconscious on the bed. "Jesus," one of the paramedics muttered, rushing to Derek. "Multiple contusions, possible internal bleeding, shattered wrist. We need to get him to Portland General immediately." Sergeant Santos pulled out handcuffs. "Patricia Stone, Jessica Stone, you're under arrest for aggravated assault with deadly weapons." "But we thought," Patricia started. "Ma'am, I don't care what you thought. You beat a bound man with weapons for 4 minutes. That's attempted murder." I handed Agent Patterson my phone. "Everything's recorded. The beating tonight with timestamps and audio. Plus this USB drive has 2 years of evidence showing Derek abusing his wife and daughter and my brother Thomas." Patterson watched the video, his expression darkening. "This is some of the clearest assault evidence I've ever seen. You two are going away for a long time." As paramedics wheeled Derek past, Patricia called out, "Derek, baby, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was you." "Save it for the judge," Santos said, guiding her to the patrol car. Within an hour, only me, Sarah, Emma, and Tyler remained. Tyler stood in the living room, processing his collapsed world. "Where's my mom?" he asked, his voice small. I crouched to his level. "Your mom and grandma hurt someone badly. The police had to take them away." "Am I in trouble too?" "That depends. Do you remember how you treated Emma?" He nodded, ashamed. "You're staying with us now. In this house, we protect each other and we're kind. Can you do that?" He looked at Emma, who watched him with cautious hope. "Yes, I can try." At 8 the next morning, I sat in an FBI interview room with Agent Patterson and Agent Linda Wu, a psychological profiler. "Hayes, you are Nathan Hayes from Portland State Psychiatric Hospital, correct?" Wu began. "Yes." I slid across Dr. Helen Rodriguez's letter. "This confirms my brother Thomas and I switched places with her supervision. Thomas needed PTSD treatment from 2 years of abuse." "Did you plan for Patricia and Jessica to assault Derek?" Patterson asked directly. "I created a situation where they'd reveal their true nature. I overheard them planning to attack me. I restrained Derek to prevent him attacking me first, then made noise. They chose to enter with weapons and beat someone they believed helpless. I ensured there was evidence." "Some might call that entrapment," Wu said. "Entrapment requires law enforcement inducing crimes. I'm not law enforcement. Patricia and Jessica have documented violence history. I didn't create their tendencies. I exposed them." Patterson nodded. "Our legal team reviewed everything. Your actions fall under self-defense and defense of others. The video is admissible. You're legally clear." "Detective Cooper faces multiple corruption charges. Your audio recordings are exactly what we needed. He'll be arrested today." "What about Derek?" "Derek faces domestic violence, assault, and child endangerment charges. Given his injuries, he'll likely accept a plea deal. Patricia and Jessica are looking at 10 to 15 years each." 3 days later, Thomas and I entered Derek's hospital room at Portland General. Derek had survived, barely. Emergency surgery for punctured lung, internal bleeding, and skull fracture. He'd been in a medically induced coma for 48 hours. When he saw us, two identical men, his eyes widened. There's two of you. Derek, I'm Thomas, the man you beat for 2 years, my brother said, his voice stronger than I'd heard it in years. And I'm Nathan, the man who stopped you. Understanding, hatred, then shame flickered across Derek's battered face. Thomas stepped closer. For 2 years, I begged you to stop hitting Sarah, to stop threatening Emma. Did you stop even once? Derek looked away. No, he whispered. Why? Tears rolled down Derek's cheeks. Because I hated myself, drowning in gambling debts, failing at everything, making you afraid. It was the only time I felt big. Derek, I said, pulling a chair close. I could destroy you. I have evidence for 20 years in prison, but I'm offering you a choice. His eyes narrowed suspiciously. What? Sign divorce papers today. Full custody to Sarah, no contest. Enter 2-year addiction treatment for gambling and alcohol. Write apology letters to Sarah and Emma. Pay child support every month, no excuses. And if I do? I'll testify you're cooperating. You'll probably get probation instead of prison. You'll have a chance to become someone your daughter isn't afraid of. Why? Derek's voice was genuinely confused. Thomas answered, because Nathan doesn't want Emma knowing her grandfather sent her father to prison. Because we want to end the cycle of violence, not continue it. Derek slowly nodded. I'll do it. All of it. I'm sorry. Sorry is just a word, I said. Changing is action. Show us through your actions. 6 weeks later, Multnomah County Courthouse was packed. The case had made local news. Mother and daughter beat son in shocking mistaken identity case. Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Cole had built her case methodically. Patricia's lawyer tried. Your Honor, Mrs. Stone believed she was defending her son. Her intent was protective, not malicious. Let's watch the video again, Ada Cole said. The courtroom fell silent as the footage played. Patricia's voice. This is for breaking Derek's wrist. The rolling pins striking flesh. Derek's muffled screams. Jessica, you think you're so tough now? 3 minutes and 47 seconds of systematic brutality. Jury members were crying. That is not defense. That is torture, Cole stated. These women beat a helpless bound man for nearly 4 minutes while he screamed. Intending to beat someone else doesn't make it better. It makes it premeditated. On the stand, I walked through everything. 2 years of abuse, 15 hospital visits, Emma hiding in corners, Thomas's broken spirit. My family had nowhere to turn. Detective Cooper, paid by Derek, buried every report. My goal was to gather evidence that couldn't be buried and protect a 3-year-old girl. After 4 hours of deliberation, guilty of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon for both Patricia and Jessica. Patricia screamed, "This isn't fair. We were protecting Derek." Judge Margaret O'Brien banged her gavel. Mrs. Stone, you had 2 years to protect your son by getting him help, by reporting his crimes. Instead, you enabled him. That choice has consequences. Sentencing, 15 years each. Detective Cooper pleaded guilty to corruption and obstruction. 8 years federal prison, $50,000 fine, permanent loss of badge and pension. Derek, true to his word, pleaded guilty and accepted a plea deal. 5 years suspended, 2 years mandatory treatment, 500 hours community service, and permanent child support. 6 months later, Laurelhurst Park was warm and bright. Sarah thrived in her small North Portland apartment with Thomas, finishing her social work degree at Portland State. I want to help women who are trapped like me, she'd told me. Emma, now 4, was a different child, laughing freely, making friends at preschool. She still saw Dr. Amy Wong weekly, but nightmares were fading. Tyler, in Thomas and Sarah's temporary care, was transforming from angry bully to thoughtful boy. Emma's teaching me to play nice, he told me solemnly. Derek was doing well in treatment, living in a halfway house, working at an auto shop, sending child support religiously. He wrote weekly letters Sarah kept unread in a box. Maybe someday Emma will want to read them, but that's her choice. I'd returned to Portland State Psychiatric Hospital as a volunteer, teaching anger management. 10 years ago, you would have killed Derek, Dr. Rodriguez said. 10 years ago, I didn't understand the difference between justice and revenge. Now, Thomas and I sat on a bench watching Emma and Tyler play. Do you think I did the right thing? I asked, giving Derek a second chance. You did something better than revenge. You broke the cycle, Thomas said. Emma ran over, face flushed and happy. Uncle Nathan, Grandpa, come push us on the swings. We'll be right there, sweetheart. Thomas, I said quietly, thank you for surviving, for keeping Sarah and Emma alive, for documenting everything. You were strong in ways I never could be. Thomas smiled, a real smile. And you were strong when I couldn't be. We walked toward the playground together, toward Emma's laughter and the warm Portland sun. As I pushed Emma on the swing, I thought about what I'd say to anyone hearing this story. If your family is being hurt, don't wait. Don't hope it gets better. But don't become what you're fighting against. Document everything. Build evidence. Reach out to domestic violence organizations. Call the FBI if local police won't help. Use every legal resource available. Violence should be the last resort, only in self-defense, because once you cross that line, even for good reasons, you carry it forever. The real heroes escape before it gets this far. They leave at the first sign of violence. They refuse to accept abuse as normal. Be smart, be prepared, be safe. And if you must fight, fight with evidence and law, not just fists. Because justice is stronger than revenge, and safety is more important than pride. Emma jumped off the swing and ran to me. Uncle Nathan, did you see how high I went? I saw, sweetheart, you were flying. Someday I'm going to fly all the way to the clouds. I believe you will, I said, picking her up. I believe you can do anything. Looking into her bright, unafraid eyes, eyes that finally held hope instead of fear, I knew every moment had been worth it. The cycle was broken, the family was healing, and Emma would grow up knowing someone had fought for her, not with hate, but with love strong enough to look like fury when it needed to. That was enough.